Okay, everyone, I am here in my hotel room. I'm traveling at the moment, and I saw this news breaking when I got off the plane, and I was like, I want to talk about it, and I want to get it out there. So here I am. Forgive me, I'm a little drowsy because I am sleep deprived, as it were, but I'm ready to talk about this, and I just want to discuss it, so bear with me. Basically, there's been a lot of speculation over the last day or so, specifically around a closed doors meeting and internal town hall that happened at Microsoft headquarters. Specifically, Satya Nadella sat down with Asha Sharma and spoke to the team at Xbox about their vision for the platform and all of this. And there were statements going around social media that ended up being like totally made up. Basically, the primary one that came up was somebody claimed that Satya told Asha and the crowd, it's a blank check policy, was what was claimed. You spare no expense. Whatever we need to do to build up Xbox, you can do it. No expenses spared. That was bull honky. That wasn't true. Of course he didn't say that. No CEO is ever going to tell you, unless you're dealing with AI, spend whatever you want to. With AI, they're fine with that apparently. But anything else, they're going to tell you, be cautious with what we're doing. But that isn't to say that this meeting was like a Debbie Downer session. It's not to say that the meeting was bad or anything. It actually reportedly left employees feeling very positive about the future of the company, basically, which is a refreshing change of pace, honestly, because apparently internally the morale at Xbox has been pretty bad for a long time. There's been reporting that, of course, Sarah Bond, who was president of Xbox, she was the one that was really pushing and heading up the Xbox Play Anywhere platform. Not to say that Phil Spencer was like blameless in that. He definitely was championing that messaging before she even came on. It seems like he hired her, brought her in to head that up specifically because he agreed with it. So I'm not saying that, Phil was like a captive and didn't have say. He was the CEO, he was in charge. And so he clearly approved of it. But Sarah Bond, apparently the way that she was implementing it ticked a lot of people off and left a lot of the Xbox employees feeling very frustrated. They didn't believe in the vision. They just weren't having it. They were not happy with that previous leadership team. And, even if they liked Phil, even if they liked Sarah, there clearly was a disconnect between what I think the average gamer and Xbox employees seemingly wanted out of the brand and platform and what Phil and Sarah's vision was. There was a pretty big disconnect, without a doubt. So hearing now that there's new leadership and that they are actively reevaluating everything is encouraging. Basically, here we are. So Asha Sharma introduced Satya Nadella, who remarked about his happiness to be there. He also noted how when he initially came on as Microsoft CEO, there were similar doubts about his knowledge on cloud and infrastructure before he led Microsoft towards being a global leader in the space. He also noted that gaming remains one of Microsoft's biggest capital investments, representing a long-term view of its role within Microsoft. And this is one thing I want to be clear about. Like Satya, he's a very smart, sharp guy. I know we make fun of him for the AI micro slop thing. You don't get to the point where you're running a multi-trillion, with a T, trillion-dollar company without being smart, okay? That's kind of a prerequisite. Like, you gotta know what you're doing. He is very smart and very, very sharp. He knows what he's doing. I sometimes disagree with how he interprets the things and his vision for it because it turns sort of corpo dystopian, but he definitely knows what he's doing, which is why as a corporate overlord, he's so daunting, right? That being said, he knows that Microsoft really only has a couple of consumer-facing products and everything else is predominantly industry side or enterprise is probably the more appropriate term. So most of their money comes from Microsoft Azure. It comes from their cloud stuff, from their server infrastructures, from their cloud investments. That's where most of their money comes from. But they do still have a couple of ventures that are customer facing, directly with people like you and me who are not representing multi-billion-dollar companies. Specifically, gaming. They do technically have a line of laptops, but I mean, come on. But Windows and like Microsoft Office is probably the other side of it. But even among Microsoft Office, the vast majority of that money comes from things like schools and companies who pay for licenses across their whole organization, not just an individual signing up. So gaming is one of like the very, very few instances of Microsoft directly selling you something. Most of their business comes from selling packages of software to big companies that then distribute it to you. Gaming is one of the few times they're working directly with you, which I think is why they've struggled doing that, because they're not very good at it. You can tell that they're used to dealing with big corporate clients, that they're not used to dealing with normal people, and that's why there's this constant disconnect. A corporation loves the idea that, oh, you buy the software here, but it works everywhere. They love that idea. That's fantastic. Whereas for you and me, that's like, okay, cool, I guess. Like, it's not that big of a deal for us. If anything, it can be frustrating because it feels like the brand identity is plummeting. It loses the value of the actual brand itself. But I think that this is key to understand, is that Satya is not just looking at gaming as another way to shift it into the enterprise space. I think he's looking to try and build this out to further their connection directly with customers and consumers, which is something they don't really have elsewhere in their business portfolio. Most of their portfolio is about enterprise work, which is great until enterprise gets shaky. If you can have all of your bases covered with enterprise and with, the consumer side of the business, you can do really, really well. Apple's a great example of having a ton of success with the consumer side of the business, but they've not really expanded into the enterprise stuff. They just don't really do that. Microsoft wants to do it all, for sure. What he said, they have a quotation here. There are core identities in this company. I don't think Microsoft will exist without these identities continuing to thrive. We're a platform company, a developer company, being a knowledge worker company, and gaming. These are the main identities of what Microsoft has always meant and will always mean. Therefore, we need to take that. We don't take it for granted. We need to renew it. I'm really thankful to Matt Booty and Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond and all of you who have built this franchise into its 25th year. Which also, quick side note, I just want to point out, it's crazy that Phil left right before the 20th anniversary, or 25th anniversary rather. Like, it furthers the idea to me that maybe this was like, Phil, are you thinking of retiring? He's like, no, I got another couple years. And Satya's like, I think you should think about retiring. And Phil's like, no, I'm good. I'm good for another couple years. And Satya's like, no. You're gonna think about retiring. I'm getting the vibe more and more that this was maybe encouraged, persuaded possibly. I know on paper, I know officially, I can't prove it, call it a hunch, but the fact that they overhauled leadership so drastically and are apparently going in a very different direction, to me suggests that maybe this was something that Satya was more supportive of than, being resigned and just going along with it because Phil was tired. The fact that Phil retired right before the 25th anniversary, that's surprising to me. But anyway, continuing on. What he says, Sharma thanked Satya for the opportunity to be the new head of the Xbox division and noted Xbox's uniqueness. She hailed the Xbox team, calling them incredible, noting that over 10% of the Xbox team had been there for over 20 years. She said it emphasized Microsoft's long-term mindset, reiterating Nadella's comments on being quote-unquote long on gaming, and asked him to elaborate on that point. Interesting. What did he say? Frankly, quote, this applies to anything we do. We should be in the core of what we do here for gaming's sake. It's not about anything other than being just an excellent company and an excellent steward for what it means to produce great games, produce great systems, and hardware. Furthermore, he continued on, and he emphasized gaming's legacy and influence on Microsoft and the wider technology stack, talking up how gaming has served as an accelerator for cloud, Windows, the GPU-based server tech revolution, and beyond. But he also said that it doesn't mean moving away from what people expect of gaming, and explained why Microsoft will, quote-unquote, always continue to invest in gaming. What he said specifically was, quote, the trickle from that excellence to the rest of the company becomes straightforward. I joke with Jensen Huang, who is the CEO of NVIDIA, if it wasn't for gaming, NVIDIA wouldn't exist. Think about it, without DirectX, I don't think the entire GPU revolution or the acceleration would have happened. Which is true. It's actually kind of fascinating how so many of these technologies that are so life-changing start from somewhat humble beginnings, that you wouldn't expect it to be massive, which is why it's also funny that like YouTube as a platform, people don't realize this, YouTube started as a dating app. Who'd have thunk it? Like it started initially as this idea for you to share videos, to kind of date each other, which is crazy. Facebook started as a way specifically for college students to interact on campus. It wasn't supposed to be this global worldwide thing, But often like a lot of these technologies can start fairly humble and then blow up into something massive. He continued to say, quote, "That's why I'm long on it. Phil, he's always talked to me about how gaming is the largest entertainment category. What is gaming in its most expansive form going forward? This doesn't mean we walk away from what people are doing today. When we think about a AAA game on a console, the question is about where else can we extend that? For me, we're long on gaming. We'll continue to invest and we'll always do so. It's up to this team to show an excellence in execution and creativity. Software always carries risk, but this is software with lots of creation risk. It's way different, but yet we have to be the best in class at it," which is all true. That all sounds good. I'm down with that, understanding that. But maybe a more cynical individual would point out, or perhaps a more realistic one would point out the fact that he is mentioning that they need to innovate, that they need to extend, figure out where gaming is going forward, where that next big innovation is, which is good to think about, but that makes me think that he's just like, cloud gaming, that's where it's going. Everybody will play games on their phones and nobody will need consoles. I hope that's not what he means, because I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's where we're going, but that's something to keep an eye on. He continued, Xbox CEO Asha Sharma discussed the time that she'd been spending with Xbox's different teams and talked about Microsoft's long-term legacy as a software company factory historically, emphasizing that great games can't be manufactured in this way, but instead need to be crafted by humans. Snap with me. Snap with me. All together right now. Snap with me. This is like the most core key and an important piece of information in this whole thing, as far as I'm concerned. Like, I cannot stress enough how important it is to understand that games cannot be quote unquote manufactured. That's a really good way of putting it. It's just different. You can manufacture Windows security updates. As I mentioned in another video I just recorded on the EA layoffs that just hit, you can manufacture a security update because you're just seeing if it fixed this vulnerability and boom, we did it. Yay. Like, you can quantify it. It checks that box. It's a success, move on, release. Video games are different, like they're just different. You're trying to create a piece of art in addition to a technical marvel. So it needs to check that box, but it also needs to do a lot of other things as well. And that means you cannot run it the same way. And that's why you can't have a team like Tango Gameworks that releases a really critically acclaimed game that people really like, and then you shut them down and fire them all. Like, you can't do that. It creates instability, you lose talent that's gonna go elsewhere. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't. And I'm hopeful that this is something that like Asha is actually truly understanding of, that there needs to be like stability within the company. He continues on. The storytelling, Satya began, why do we love games? They tell stories, the mythologies that make us who we are, getting down to that core, the craft that goes with it. This is the place where we have to get the cultural zeitgeist and then have it manifest in everything we do, in the games, in the marketing approach. Everything that we do with this brand, in this brand, represents that. Nadella said that he hoped other parts of Microsoft could eventually learn from Xbox. He said that Xbox at its best lifts the entire company, owing to its consumer-facing nature, as I mentioned earlier. He told anecdotes about how some of Microsoft's bread and butter high-powered enterprise customers often want to meet him specifically because they're Xbox customers at home, not just because they're in enterprise. Gaming, quote unquote, emotionally touches us all, he said, saying he wants that aspect of Microsoft to exist always. There's also an aspect of this that I think is interesting. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it applies here specifically, but I have to wonder if somebody like Satya starts to really ponder at this point in his career legacy and how that affects things. Because I think that's what's applying like to Tim Cook at Apple right now, where I think he's starting to really think about what's my legacy? Like, when I retire in a couple years, what will I be remembered for? And that's why he's swinging for the fences with like Apple Vision Pro and trying to make a new innovative technology to be remembered by. And I wonder if that's something that's happening with Satya as well, where he wants to create something that's bigger than him and have a cultural impact, because while making the world's leading cloud infrastructure company and setup is a notable achievement, it's not exactly something you probably want left on your tombstone. Like, I think people would like to have a cultural or emotional impact with people. And maybe that's also part of what Satya's reevaluating with here, is that Microsoft could perhaps have a more cultural influence than they do right now. That very well could just be hopeful thinking on my end. Maybe it has nothing to do with anything, but figured I'd throw it out. Continuing on, Xbox CEO Asha Sharma acknowledged Xbox's difficulties as of late, saying that gaming had been in a transition phase. She said, quote, everything is being relitigated, end quote, in regards to Xbox's strategy, echoing our recent interview with Asha Sharma, where she said that she's investigating some of Xbox's decisions over the past year. They discussed where gaming will go over the next phase of its life, but Satya Nadella cautioned that Xbox can't lose sight of what it already has. Quote, we have to make sure that the friends we have today are the friends that you have tomorrow, Satya said of Xbox's existing customers. Quote, you want to wake up feeling like your friendship has grown even stronger. We have to really make sure, whether it's console, whether it's PC, whether it's the lover of Forza, Halo, we really want to make sure that they love us for what they expect us to do, end quote. Now, make of this what you will, interpret it however you want. I read this as basically a confirmation that they're not going to like retcon cross-platform stuff. I don't think that's what they're doing. I read this as pretty clearly being indicative of them choosing to continue to meet players where they expect people to be and where players expect them to meet them. In other words, like they're not going to strip PS5 off of Fable. They're not going to retcon decisions they've already made. I also think that just practically, what do we know for a fact? Amy Wood, the CFO of Microsoft, has put in an expectation that the games, that all of the divisions within Microsoft need to hit certain profitability standards. They need to hit certain margin requirements. The number that was thrown around was 30%. Some people said that wasn't accurate, but when you looked at the reporting around that counter, quote unquote, of that claim, there was no source given, and it was just an assertion from an anonymous source. So I don't know who I believe. There's a lot of people saying 30% is the number. Others are saying, nuh-uh. Well, one other anonymous source said, nuh-uh. So I'm going to go with the 30%. But either way, we can agree that the number that they expect is pretty solid. It's a good margin number. And they're already struggling to hit that while bringing everything everywhere. I cannot fathom a world in which Xbox and Microsoft decide to eat the cost of having things be console exclusive for years to try and make up ground with PlayStation. I just don't think they're going to do that. Like, I just don't see it. Yes, that's very long-term thinking. Yes, they're thinking if we can take on PlayStation, we'll be better off in the long run. Yeah, that's all true, but I just don't see them giving up hundreds of millions of dollars. I just don't see it. What I do see, though, is it's quite likely that maybe they reevaluate some things. So, for example, there was reporting suggesting that Call of Duty going to Game Pass represented a roughly $300 million loss. And if that's the case and that number is accurate, I wouldn't be surprised if they remove Call of Duty from Game Pass and they say, okay, Game Pass is going to be for our boutique experiences. It's going to be for like the single player stuff. The big, massive games are going to be all, individually purchased and something. Maybe they'll do something like that where they'll just reevaluate how Game Pass works and structure it more like the PlayStation subscription goes. I'm not totally sure though, but I read this statement from Satya and it sounds to me like they're not retconning exclusivity stuff. So anybody who was hoping that they would, do a 180 on that one, I don't think they will. Continuing on, Satya Nadella talked about how gaming can be a force for good in the world and took a swipe, pun, at the doom scrolling culture that has begun encroaching on our free time. He said, quote unquote, joy in active engagement hobbies like gaming and coding have an opportunity to make the entire world a better place. Quote, attention is a finite thing that humans have. How can we earn a permission tastefully for more of that attention? It brings joy back. That's the thing I always think about. Gaming is an active engagement. It's not that passive scrolling on things and so on. I do want us to be the ones that bring that back, that active engagement. That's what console and PC represents in some ways. Why do people love the controller, the console, their PC? It's because you're immersed. I look at the reports, the level of hijacking of our attention that's going on. I want us to reverse that. Joy in coding, joy in gaming. That's all I want us to live in. If we can bring that back, I think the world would be a better place for it, which I think is fascinating. And talk about a reversal where like a year ago, Satya was talking about how, hey, we're going to have AI do all of the coding. AI is going to do all of the programming. Nobody needs to program anymore. It's fine. And if you are playing games on your phone, that's fine. That's why Xbox is there. Xbox is your phone too. So if you're on your phone, you can play Xbox. If you're on your laptop, you can play Xbox. If you're on, your console, you can play Xbox. But we've seen that that's just not. I don't think players work that way. I just don't think that's how people work. In reality, if you're on your phone, you're not probably in the mindset for the vast majority of people to sit down and spend an hour playing a game. You would rather, if you're going to play a game, boot it up on your big TV and play on your console, or sit at your desk and play on your computer where it's going to look and run better, because that's what you're there to do. I think the miscalculation is just assuming that, people are on their phone. So if we can just put an alternative on their screen that's not TikTok, we'll win over some of their time and therefore their money and spend. But that's just not the case. The platforms are different and people engage with the platforms differently. The types of games that work on a mobile phone are different than the kind of games that work on a big TV or projector or something. They're just different. Continuing on, based on the conversations I've had with Xbox staffers over the past few years, I can't help but feel some of Satya Nadella's comments here are probably long overdue. I concede fully that I've taken a dim view of the way Satya Nadella has handled the aspects of Microsoft's business, whether it's the rush to AI tools before they're really fit for purpose, the mishandling of the Surface brand, the death of the Windows Phone, and the disconnection between Xbox and its fans of late. But it really does seem like Microsoft has identified that it's stepped off the rails a bit as it seeks to find itself in an incredibly chaotic consumer tech market. Quote, I want us to keep rediscovering that moment, the games that people love, the consoles and the systems people love, and really just doing the best job we can as a company. That's it. That's all I want us to do, Nadella said in closing. For those fans who have counted on us, I just want to make sure that we live up to what they expect of us. I know there's a lot of feedback. Believe me, I'm on Twitter too sometimes. Which I'm sorry, it's just the idea of Satya being on his phone. Oh God. Why are they all saying Microsoft slop? He says, quote, for those fans who have counted on us, I just want to make sure that we live up to it. I just read that one. I just didn't get it. Sorry. But I really think it's that passion, though, that they have. This is the base of folks who just want us to do a fantastic job of really doing what we're meant to do as Team Xbox. This realization and acknowledgement of negative consumer sentiment does seem to be echoing across other Microsoft divisions beyond Xbox too, including contacts I have in Microsoft's AI and Windows stacks. The teams in Microsoft's various divisions have privately and even publicly in some cases spoke up about how energized they feel lately, and I think it's in part due to a generalized refocusing on wanting to move Microsoft to a better place. To hear it directly from Satya Nadella that the firm will quote-unquote always invest in gaming should be reassuring to those who have succumbed to fears that Microsoft isn't taking a long-term view here. Portents of Xbox demise are decades old and will probably continue as it celebrates its 50th anniversary in another 25 years from now. And then he goes on to say that they have a mountain to overcome, etc., etc. But I do think that this messaging is broadly good. It's what you would hope to hear. And this is where we're at the end of the day, okay? They're saying a lot of the right things, but as the saying goes, talk is cheap. It's really easy to say the right things. It's a lot harder to do the right things. It's a lot harder. And so with this, I hear that, and I'm like, okay. But I think it's also important that we maintain a level head and understand once more that this is a multi-trillion-dollar company, okay? They're not your friends. This is about making money. Sometimes there's things like concerns over legacy that can cloud the judgment of executives, just like I think happened with the Vision Pro, as I said earlier, where that product I don't think would have ever launched if Steve Jobs were in charge. I don't think he would have ever let that thing out into the public. But Tim Cook did, because he really, really wanted a legacy product that it's like, oh, Tim Cook was the visionary that made that happen. And so that clouded his judgment. And in the case of Satya, maybe he does want a cultural legacy to leave behind where he can be the guy that, kickstarted the tech revolution in gaming and all of that. I kind of doubt that. To me, it seems more likely that Satya is just looking at the data. The data is very, very clear. What's going on in the AAA gaming space is not working. What's going on specifically with Microsoft is not working in the gaming space. They've got to do something different. It's that simple. Like whether you thought the Xbox Play Anywhere campaign was a good idea or a bad idea, whether you play games on xCloud or not, it wasn't working. Like it was causing people to jump ship from the platform to just end up going to the competitor and spending way more money with the competitor. It was failing. It was just a concept that wasn't working. A fun experiment, sure. Maybe even a well-informed experiment that had potential, but it wasn't working. And so they've decided to do something differently. And I think that that's good. But I think it's also, again, just crucial for us to remember that talk is cheap, actions are actually valuable. In the case of Asha Sharma, I think that she's saying a lot of the right things. She's going and meeting with people. She says that they're actively, quote unquote, relitigating every decision that Microsoft has made in recent memory to try and see if they need to take it in a new direction. That's good. And I think there's a lot of things that have been done in the last few years that could use a reevaluation and relitigation, maybe even a pivot, you know? And so I think that they're saying all of the right stuff, but it's important to just remember, again, it's a multi-trillion-dollar company. She's the former head of Core AI. She was put in there as an AI executive. I think that AI tools and AI workflows are going to become ubiquitous across the whole organization. I think that's going to become standard. But I also think at the same time, there will be some good changes made as well. I think that the Xbox that we see in a couple of years, once Asha's leadership has actually had time to kind of play out, I think it'll look very different, and I think it'll play very different from the Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond era, in I think a good way, but I do expect there to be continued growing pains and difficulty with some of the stuff that's going on. But at the very least, you know, more than anything, we can point at Asha and say, oh, here we go. It's just another AI executive put in place. Here we go. And I get that. Obviously, I feel that on a spiritual level. But perhaps the glasses half full way of looking at it is to just simply say she's an outsider. A lot of the mistakes that were being made for years were because of the old way of doing things, seemingly. I mean, Phil Spencer had been around forever. You can see videos of Phil Spencer promoting the Kinect back on the 360. I mean, he was around for ages. And so maybe the exact thing that Microsoft needs with Xbox is a fresh set of eyes. Somebody to come in and listen to feedback from studios and actually do something about it. And maybe the cost of that is that she forces everybody to write emails with Copilot, but I guess time will tell. So overall, it's been really interesting. While the news is not as like, I think overly exciting as some of the leaks would have suggested, I still think that they're saying the right things. And I'm hopeful that they actually end up wowing us and demonstrating that they are serious about this, and they actually end up really blowing us away. But time will tell, because ultimately, talk is cheap, actions speak louder than words. But that's going to do it for me. Thanks for chilling with me while I ramble about this. I am hella jet lagged, and so I'm going to try and force myself to sleep for the next 10 hours or so. So wish me luck. Much love. I'll be talking soon. I'll be recording segments and stuff. You guys can't get away from me that easy. And I'll be able to share what I'm doing here in some mysterious land relatively soon. So buckle up. Much love. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.
He took my thing.